we want to talk about peer review. You've received some feedback, and now you're in the condition of looking at this feedback, looking at your work, and trying to decide how to integrate that. We'll give some experiences about what that's been like, what it is like in the academic world to receive peer review feedback and to integrate those changes or not into your work. So the idea behind peer review, the whole idea is that we help each other in our field. So I'll talk about that. We'll talk about the idea of giving feedback to authors, help for the journals. And it also, one point that's important for peer review is that we filter out bad work, because the whole idea of having a peer-reviewed scientific article is that it has made it through this process. It means it's good. It means we don't publish stuff that's not good. So there is an aspect of filtering. I think it's overemphasized, but that is part of the peer review, the purpose of peer review. Tom Waits said the world's a hellish place and bad writing is destroying the quality of our suffering. We need to make sure that we're doing pretty good writing. So that's part of the peer review process too, doing good science, doing good writing. So when we're doing peer reviews, we should try to be the reviewer that we would like to have. That is someone who's nice and constructive, gives us good, strong feedback, but does it in a way that's easy to digest. And we want to be also the person who's receiving that feedback. I call them here the reviewee. Be that person that you'd like to support. So someone who takes your inputs seriously and is thorough about it and humble in response to your ideas. It's not peer review where people just congratulate each other on how well they're doing, but rather peer review to give each other feedback in a constructive, meaningful, hopeful way. This is something I really like from, who's this, Daniela Navarro. She has some really good points on how to be a nice reviewer. So the idea there is that we can really try to be kind, because it is true that often when we're doing peer reviews, when you're invited by a journal in the future as an academic, senior academic, to review someone else's work, that person may be getting into this for the first time. They may be struggling. They may really be confused. And so we should do it in a way that's easy to digest, as I said. And unfortunately, it's less and less the case, but unfortunately, public shaming masquerading as an academic critique does happen. So don't be that person. Some people are just kind of mean about it. We should try to be nice. Even if you know much more, the person who's presenting or the work that you're reading is really poorly done, try to be constructive and nice. So there are different types of peer review, just as an overview for you guys. There are all different types of them. There's blind, double blind, published, and probably others. I'll just explain those to you here. So single blind is a peer review process where the reviewers know who you are, but you don't know who they are. So they know your name, but you don't know their name. Double blind is probably a little more common in this format. You don't know who the reviewers are, and they don't know who you are. So you've removed all your information from the paper. There's no way for them to tell who wrote it. And published is becoming more and more common. And it's very interesting format where everything is totally transparent. So when the paper is finally published, all of the reviews, all of the exchange between the reviewers and the authors is also published. You can go and look at those in the paper. In case the paper itself wasn't enough, you can also go back and read the previous versions and the process of peer review.
I think that at least a single blind is the most common format of peer review that is out there, right? Almost all journals offer this.
I work a lot in double blind, but maybe that's in like human ecology field. They like to do more of this because they don't want us to just like help each other get published. It's kind of a small community. Maybe, I don't know. But yeah, single blind is also very common. Yeah. I get a paper, it has everyone's name. I know who wrote it. Yeah. Yeah, the editor, you can choose who not to include from the editorial team, or you can ask for somebody from the editorial team specifically. You won't necessarily get them. And you generally, when you submit a paper, part of the process is to also submit potential reviewers. So they will, because right now, or I don't know right now, but everyone's exhausted. We're reviewing work all the time. We don't have time. And so a lot of editors are in the condition of sending the article. I, for example, when I'm doing editorial work, I'll send the article to like 10, 15 people, and 1 or 2 or 3, ultimately 3, hopefully, will respond with a review. So they'd like to have some suggestions from you because you know maybe who's in the field, and it should be someone who you haven't worked very closely with, but someone who can offer a review of your work. So, but you don't get to say, these are the 3 people who will review, but you can make suggestions and the editor can take those into account or not. A long answer to a simple question, sorry. Okay, so that's the types of peer review, just 3 types of peer review, the most common ones. The benefits, what are the benefits of peer review? We talked about these. That gives us a good basis for knowing that our work is strong, that we can do, that we've done good work, that it's worthwhile. It's advancing sciences, it's not bad. It's not just based on our own assumptions, but it's actually real science. Here are some quotes. The assessment has been updated with the reviewer's suggestions. We were not aware of these resources. The paper is stronger. We're grateful for the reviewer's feedback. Oh, those quotes, I didn't put my name because they're quotes from me that I wrote about the review process in different papers in the publication process, because the review process actually improved my manuscripts. So for some of the papers that I published, going through the review process was a way of improving the work. It shouldn't be the way we formulate our process, that we say, oh, we're just going to whatever, throw something together and then see if the reviewers can improve it. That's not what we want. We want to send our very best work. And then we should be surprised if this happens, but it does happen that we learn about new resources. Maybe there's some ideas that are brand new to us and can improve the paper. So it can be quite beneficial, the process. This one is really shocking, but it's also a benefit of peer review. Naomi Wolf published this book, a bunch of different anthropology studies of homosexuality and the punishments for that. So the treatment of that in UK society over the years. And she learned while she was being interviewed for BBC, she learned that the basis for her assessment was wrong. She'd misunderstood. You can click on that later, share the link, and you can listen to it if you want to be cringe, if you want to have a lot of feelings of cringe. But she thought that this term death recorded meant that the convict, so someone who was being tried for a crime, she thought that the term death recorded meant that they had been killed. But in fact, it meant that they had been pardoned. She misunderstood this term. And so in her book, she made this big case for how many people were being killed for their sexuality, when in fact they weren't. They were being released from prison. So, and she didn't know about this. Her book is published. There are lots of copies out there in the world, and then she's being interviewed on the BBC, and that's when she found out. The BBC View interviewer said, "I think you're wrong about this term," and she's floored there in that moment. So we, hopefully, if we go through a good peer review process, will not be in her condition. We will avoid making mistakes. If we accidentally misunderstood this term and we get 3 of our peers who are familiar with the academic literature and know about the historical context and legal context in the UK, and they read our paper and they see that, then they'll flag it and let us know. And we won't be in the condition of publishing something that has such a big mistake. Oh, I said that, cringeworthy. That's my quote about this one. Such a cringe. Limitations of peer review. So it can create really lengthy delays. I have a paper now that I first wrote in 2017. And I'm still I get rejected and resubmit. So I'm still working with that. Sometimes it can take a year for the journal to go through it. It puts a lot of demands on the academic community. As I said, we're all exhausted from reading each other's work, peer reviewing all this work. It's hard. It's hard work. So that's not great. And sometimes the articles can read like a defensive response. So you read like you see the narrative has a flow, it's rather clear. And then you find this whole section where they have gone in depth into some kind of extra analysis because they get beat down by the peer reviewers and they have to do like a defensive response to the peer review in their response. So this is This is a meme about this one from Abdullawi. So this is like after integrating the peer review process, incorporating the reviewer's comments substantially improve the work. Probably not, unless you like that kind of part. Journals in the revision process. So how to respond. Do it, as we said, in a humble way. And humility is a practice. I think you need to be we really need, especially academics. I think we have to already know everything. We have to be the experts. And so we're uncomfortable saying things like, I don't know. Let's find out. Oh, I didn't know that. Thanks. I was wrong. I've thought about what you said to change my mind. Things like phrases like this are hard, especially for academics, but I think for everyone. But we should practice these things. So we can do it in our review to the peer review. If they say, I think this is wrong, then you can say, check it out and see if it is wrong. How do we do that? So when we respond, we begin our response to a review, first of all, with a summary. Summarize all the changes that we made. We should always, if we get a comment from the reviewer and we think maybe it's wrong, let's say they make a suggestion and we're not sure that it's true, then we can give them the benefit of the doubt. Because it may be the case, yeah, we were right and we wrote it well and they're wrong, but they are indicating to us that it was written in a way maybe that wasn't very clear. So we can rephrase it in a way that's going to be clear to other readers like them. But if there is a conflict, you can also speak to the editors. Hopefully not. That's rather rare, but if there is some kind of major conflict, you can also communicate to the editors about that. Typically, when we respond, we need to create a document that's responding to reviewers. We're not requiring that of you for this course, but typically there would be a document where it's clear what the reviewer said. And then within the same document, clearly, distinctly written in a different text or a different font or a different color, your response to each of their points. Every single point needs a response. And typically, in that case, I also put quotes about what I changed. So if they said, hey, this sentence is awkward, you forgot a comma, then I might, or, you should consider this reference, then I'll put a quote from the paper right there in that response. So they don't have to go and open two different documents and look back and forth necessarily. They can see what I did and the quote and the page number, everything's there. Don't ignore any issues. I made that mistake early on in my career. I had a paper and I ignored a few things that they said because I thought they were foolish. And my paper was then rejected after major revisions, which is very painful. That's a sad time to get rejected. So address everything they've said. And this is continued. What else do I want to say? Make it easy to navigate. As I said, put colors, indentation, use sections, make it very clear. Each of their ideas gets a response. Yeah.
One of the other ways is, I think, because when we send in the manuscripts, we send it with line numbers.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, and when I have responded to reviewers, what I did was also to say, because when they give me the review, they say, okay, line 250, something is there, right? Like, so, okay, this now has changed to line, like say 230 or something, because some correction was done and you can find the changes here in that line with the line number, right? So
I make sure in the summary of changes, I always say at the end of the summary of changes, I say my responses are below your comments. So each of the reviewers' comments, my response is below that in a different font or in italics, indented, and the line numbers refer to this document. So I refer to a revised document.
Yes.
Yeah, so that they know which document to look at now with the new line number. So they might say on line 60, you cite this author, but you should consider these other authors, right? And then I say, okay, on line 57, I now have included those additional authors. Thanks for those papers. Those are really helpful. Yeah. Or I've decided not to do that, and then my explanation. Font color. Whenever possible. So rather than writing a big long text, because this is annoying as a reviewer, I say, you should consider these authors or consider this concept in your definition of this term. And then they give me a 2-paragraph response, and I have to read the 2 paragraphs in order to see at the very end that they're saying, no, I'm not going to do that. So just at the very beginning, make it clear from the beginning of the response, we've changed as you suggested, or we've decided not to change, and here's why. Then give the explanation. Take them seriously if you think it's outside of the scope. Yeah, if we think it's that big cement conglomeration on top of our art piece, we can say, well, I think it's out of the scope, we're not going to do it. And again, and this is kind of, I mentioned it a few times, but we probably don't generally want to do this, consulting the editor, but it is always possible. And refer to the previous versions, explain what was changed. Refer to the line numbers of the new version very clearly as you work. We don't want to be in a condition where we think, because I think this is where I was when I didn't respond to some of the comments in the early manuscript in my scientific career, when I thought this reviewer is reviewer too. Who is this person who's reviewing my work? They don't know what they're talking about. I'm just going to ignore this silly idea. But of course, they're people just like the rest of us, so take them seriously. Yeah, I think that's most of what I wanted to say. We're not requiring for this course any formal response or any response really at all. We just like to see that the suggestions we made and the suggestions that you got from others are part of the new work, but we're not requiring that you formulate a peer review response. This is just for you to know how that would work in the case and how it will work in the future when you are reviewing work.